Good morning, Wareham. It is Friday, March 8th. We have a great show here for you. The weather report, news headlines, Megan Neely from Wareham Week. And I did not mention Today in History segment because we're not going to have Today in History segment. We have so much material here for you this morning. Therefore, I had to eliminate that segment out. And so, as I mentioned, Wareham Week is in the building. Megan Neely to cover the story of the day. And also, town elections nears, and we have candidates for you. We're going to air my interview with Jennifer Bailey, who is one of 3 candidates running for school committee. And also, the Wareham community has outgrown its police department. We'll be airing the interview I did with the acting chief, John Walsek, regarding the budget restrictions the department is facing and the repercussions of that. But first, I would like to take this moment to thank Not Your Average Antiques, an antique shop down Cranberry Highway in East Wareham, for donating the props that you see in the Good Morning Wareham set. So stay tuned because the weather and the news headlines are next. Today, a mix of clouds and sun early in the day, then becoming cloudy later in the day, high near 35 degrees. Snow flurries and snow showers tonight with low at 24 degrees. There is a 40% chance of snow. Partly cloudy skies with high at 39 degrees tomorrow and low at 23 degrees. Rain and snow in the morning, turning to rain in the afternoon for Sunday, with high at 44 degrees and low at 38 degrees. Winds at 15 to 25 miles per hour. Expect normal traffic at Route 3 and 495. The weather conditions are good, and so safe travels, everyone. And now to the news. There were a few news stories over the week, and here are the news headlines. Wareham Week newspaper had these headlines. Wareham police seized $4,000 worth of fentanyl during a raid. A drug raid in Wareham netted police some $4,000 worth of fentanyl and $2,000 in cash, leading to the arrest of 4 men. Wareham Police, Bourne Police, and Massachusetts State Police reportedly conducted a joint investigation and executed a search warrant at a Wareham complex located on 48 Swift Beach Road at about 4:30 p.m. on March 5th. Aside from the cash and 40 grams of fentanyl, police reportedly seized multiple digital scales and other instruments associated with narcotics manufacture. And to the other news, absentee ballots are available for Wareham's April 2nd election. Absentee ballots for the town's upcoming April 2nd election are now available at the town's clerk's office, located at 54 Marion Road. The last day to apply for the absentee ballot will be April 1st at noon. Polling on election day will take place from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The last day to register to vote in order to participate in the April 2nd election and annual town meeting on April 22nd, 2022 is Wednesday, March 13th. The clerk's office will be open until 8 p.m. on this day, and for more information, please call the town's clerk's office. And onset woman hits the catwalk for cancer research at New York's Fashion Week. A 61-year-old onset woman made her runway debut last month at New York's Fashion Week, modeling lingerie, made for breast cancer patients like herself to raise money for the awareness and treatment of the disease. Barbara Bigelow was first diagnosed with breast cancer in 2003 along with her two sisters. She is now on stage 4 of metastatic breast cancer, which is the term for when the disease spreads outside the breast and becomes terminal. Bigelow is now a member of the Gleason YMCA's Live Strong program, and she said she plans to continue raising money for the for Metafever with local events in Wareham. And to another news, Wareham selectmen order dogs to be euthanized after second attack. A recent attack by two pit bull mixed dogs deemed dangerous last June has resulted in their death sentence. The owner of the dogs, Paul Bigelow, did not attend the hearing but issued the selectmen a written statement in which he apologized and took full responsibility for the incident. On Tuesday, Wareham selectmen ordered the dogs owned by Paul and Laura Bigelow to be euthanized after animal control said they posed danger to the community. And to another news, and our last news of the day, Wareham Building Commissioner is leaving for a position in Dartmouth. Wareham's Building Commissioner David Lequina will leave his position with the town next week for a new job as the Building Commissioner of Dartmouth. Town Administrator Derek Sullivan said Requena will be around in the weeks following his departure to help ensure a smooth transition period. A new building commissioner has not yet been named. And that is all I have for the news headlines. Stay with us. Megan Neely is next after this short break. Earlier in the show, during the news headlines, I did mention that the owner of the two dogs who are going to be put down, I mispronounced his name. It is Paul Gago, and not the other name that I used. I think was Paul Bigelow. So Paul Gago. He's the one who's going to be losing his two dogs. Okay, moving on. Guess who? It is Friday, which means Megan Neely, the editor at Wareham Week newspaper, is in the studio with us to cover the story of the day segment. So stay with us because Megan has a lot of stories and a big announcement to make during our show. Welcome.
Hey, Queen. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thank you for being here this morning. So what you got for us? You got several stories for us.
Yeah, we had a lot going on this week. I want to talk about the upcoming April 2nd election because we had a mix-up with some nomination papers that has changed the playing field for school committee.
Yeah.
There's an article from the Mill Pond Diner that's going to be going before voters at town meeting, and it's got some pretty interesting history behind it.
Okay.
Our basketball team made it to semifinals, but we unfortunately lost.
Ooh, okay.
And also, I want to touch on the dangerous dog hearing as well, because that has some interesting history.
Okay. So how about this? Let's start with the dangerous dog hearing, because I just mentioned that one last. So
Yeah.
these two dogs are going to be euthanized because they attacked again for the second time?
Yeah, and people will probably remember the first attack back in June near the paper mill cranberry bogs. A woman was out walking, and these same two dogs kind of ran up out of nowhere, severely injured her. She had to be taken to the hospital, and they couldn't find the owner of the dogs for some time after the attack. So that was the first incident that these dogs were involved in.
Okay.
And our animal control officer really fought for the owners to, keep these dogs and try and get them some training and register them with the town and not have this be a problem. But unfortunately, there was a second attack on someone else's dog.
Now, so to me, this screams negligence from the owner. And I have to be careful. I do not know the owner, but how can this happen for the second time?
Yeah, it really, negligence seems like the best way to put it, and I don't know the owners personally either, but the animal control officer was extremely disappointed during the hearing with the selectmen. She said she was absolutely heartbroken over this, because, they had requested that the dogs receive training, that they have microchips, and that they be registered with the town so that they knew where they were. Documentation for all of these things was never provided to the selectmen. They were also supposed to increase the height of their fence in their yard. They didn't do that. So there were a lot of restrictions put in place. The dogs weren't supposed to leave the property without a leash or a muzzle, and that didn't happen either. So all the guidelines were put into place, and they were just never followed.
So these dogs are going to be euthanized because of that?
Yes.
Now, we have to be careful here. Animals are animals at the end of the day. Could be a defensive mechanism for them to attack. So is this right, you think? What's your personal stance?
That's a great... I am definitely one of those people, and especially because they're pit bull mixed dogs. I know there will be a lot of people who say, this happened because they're pit bulls. It has nothing to do with the owners. The breed is just inherently dangerous. But I really feel that it's, no bad dogs, just bad owners.
Yeah.
That if these animals were, secure and not running off leash when the second attack happened as the owner was attempting to put the dogs into his car, he didn't have them on leashes, which is why they were able to run off and attack the other person's dog. So if he had been doing what he was supposed to be doing, it never would have happened.
Absolutely, yeah. It's within their nature, and the owner chose to have those dogs. So,
when you adopt a breed that you're responsible for everything that comes with it.
Absolutely. Not to compare it, but when somebody adopts a lion and then a lion becomes violent, I'm sorry.
Fun fact, I actually used to work at a zoo.
Oh, okay. You didn't get too close to them, did you?
No, not that close.
Oh, very good, because I'm sorry, Megan, but if I read on a newspaper or I see a news coverage saying that Megan nearly got attacked by a lion, my first question was, where was she? She was trying to pet the lion. She had a connection with the lion. I'm sorry, Megan, but my first reaction is a big, huge laugh. And I think Mother Nature took care of that problem.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so moving on to this town election news that, Jeff Sweat, right? He's impacted by this.
Yeah. So Jeff had announced that he was going to run for Mary Morgan against her three-year seat. So that would have been a two-way race, and then there's another seat for 2 years, which was also going to be a two-way race between April Rossi and Jennifer Bailey. And as I was setting up candidate interviews for the newspaper, I reached out to Jen Bailey, and I found out that Jeff had actually been given the wrong papers for the wrong seat. He didn't notice, the town clerk didn't notice.
Now, when you were getting that information, was that information already cleared with him, or did he learn of that through your article?
No, Jeff did know, because I did call him to ask if he had anything to say about it, and he was aware of it. It seems like an incredibly unfortunate mistake. Jeff had 66 signatures for him to vote, for him to run, and absolutely no one noticed that the papers were wrong until our town clerk, Marion Silva, was starting to get the ballots together, and she realized she did not have the right paperwork.
So to that, I know that Jeff had to sign it, which means that I authorize these papers are correct, and this is my signature to approve everything here. Whose fault is that at the end of the day? The town clerk for giving him the wrong papers, or Jeff not reading the papers carefully?
I feel like you could assign blame either way. I think it's 50-50, honestly, that, it was the wrong papers in the beginning, but everybody can make a mistake. And, you know, Jeff didn't double check them, but at the same time, why would he? He trusted that he had been given the correct ones.
Okay.
So it just seems like a really unfortunate happenstance at the end of the day.
And this was after the deadline already passed, so he cannot get new papers.
Yeah, there's no way. They have called state officials
Yeah.
to try and see if there was any way that they could change it and put him on the ballot for the 3-year seat, but there's nothing that can be done, unfortunately.
Okay, so who do we have? The basketball team?
Yes.
They're doing great, then they lost.
Yes, we were doing really good. We made it to state semifinals against Burke High School, which is from Dorchester. A much bigger and stronger team, obviously, from the Boston suburbs. And we were fighting with them neck and neck in the first quarter of the game, but it just wasn't going to happen. They gained a 10-point lead on us, then we went to like a 30-point lead, and there was just no coming back. Okay. But the team played really, really hard.
All right, fantastic. And what else are we left with?
The Mill Pond Diner.
Mill Pond Diner. What's up with the Mill Pond Diner?
So there's a citizens petition right now that's going to be going before voters at town meeting. The Mill Pond Diner is not on town sewer. They're on a tight septic tank, and they want to connect to town sewer. But in order to do that, they have to go through the Tremont Nail Factory. And because that's town-owned land, the voters are going to be asked to approve that.
Oh, okay.
And what makes this very interesting is that the previous owner of, or at least there were two owners, the owner at the old company store and the owner of the Mill Pond Diner used to share a town sewer bill.
Okay.
A few years ago, however, there was some dispute between them as to who was supposed to be paying how much.
Yes.
Of
Well,
the split
absolutely,
cost.
the diner.
Yep, absolutely. It sounds like the diner should be paying more. I don't have a ton of background, but there was some argument between them, and ultimately the owner of the old company store decided to clog the diner sewer pipe with cement because he felt that the diner owner was not paying his fair share. So there's some interesting history there that now the town is going to have to get involved and try and figure out.
Holy jeez. Okay, we are running out of time here, so we have to go back to it. We have to rush to your big announcement.
Yes. So I know I've only been editor for a short while, but I will actually be leaving Wareham Week this Wednesday.
What is going on? You guys leave so fast. It's like you leave so fast, and I change, to a new dress the next day.
Yeah.
So who is coming to replace you?
Chloe Shefford, who is our reporter currently at Dartmouth Week, she started around the same time I did. She's really great. She's got a lot of the same experiences. So she'll be coming over from Dartmouth to help run Wareham's paper.
Okay, and do we have a new reporter?
Yes, we have our new reporter, Nadia, who started with us this past Monday. She is a graduate from BU, and she is also a Russian national from Moscow.
Mother Russia. And her accent, I met her, her accent.
Her accent is very thick. We'll hopefully get her in the studio for you so everyone can meet her.
Well, Megan, thank you so much for your dedication to this show, and I will miss you. I wish you all the best where you're going.
Thank you.
When you become famous, remember your first debut was right here at WCTV.
I will. Thank you, Queen.
All right, so that was Megan Neely, the editor at Wareham Week newspaper, to discuss the story of the day, and she also made the announcement that she'll be moving on from Wareham Week. So we are sad for her departure, but we'll remember and cherish these days. So moving on, I sat down with Jennifer Bailey last week to discuss her goals and the reason why she is running for the two open seats in the school committee. Jennifer Bailey is one of the candidates. And here was how our conversation went. Town elections are April 2nd, and in the race is Jennifer Bailey, one of 4 candidates running for the 2 open seats for school committee. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. So you're one of 4 candidates running for the 2 open positions. And one of the candidates is Jeff Sweat, who is a name recognition in this town. He has served in the school committee for so many years. He lost his election last year. He's coming back this year. So people listening to this interview, they are going to ask the same question. Why you?
So you're right. Jeff certainly brings a lot to the table. He has a lot of experience. He has a lot of community involvement. He has a lot of education to back up his ideas and to sort through things. And my other opponent, April, brings a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of dedication, a history with the town and the families here. I think I bring a combination of those two things. So I have the enthusiasm, I have the dedication, and I also have the education and the experience to let me sort through some of these complex issues. I think what differentiates me is that I don't necessarily have the same agenda that other people might. I'm coming in with a fresh perspective, and I'm really interested in listening. I'm willing to admit that I don't know everything, and I'm looking forward to listening and finding out more, and I think that's what sets me apart a little bit. Okay, wonderful. Now, you know, there are a lot of misconceptions in the school, okay, Wareham public schools that are dealing with. And you're coming from a long line of educators, your father, your mother, you yourself. You worked in Wareham for a little bit. You're currently working in Old Rochester High School, right? Yep. What is your general overview about Wareham public schools? I think we're starting to move in a really good direction. I think there are some really positive, exciting things happening that people need to hear about. Because you're right, there is a perception that, oh, everybody gets bullied. There's not, you know, whatever the negative feelings are that are out there. And I think we need to really focus on the exciting things that are happening. So for example, there's a literacy program at DECUS that's going on that's showing some really promising results for boosting up scores for kids who are coming in not knowing letters. You know, getting at a disadvantage in that sense, and so if this program can boost them up to fill some of that gap, that's really exciting. At the middle school, there's a lot of project-based learning going on, so there's hands-on, there's experiential kinds of things that our kids are getting really excited about and really invested in. And that's really what I want to see for our kids, is having that passion for education and having it be interesting and meaningful to them. And then at the high school, we have the dual enrollment program, we have the IB program, so there's really rigor, there's really good educational things that are happening in terms of our schools, and I think we need to really promote that and make people aware of that. That being said, there's always room for improvement. So I think looking at how can we boost some of the social emotional things that are going on. So we have hired more staff, which is wonderful. We've got more social workers, more guidance counselors, and I really commend the superintendent for recognizing that as a need and finding a way to make that happen. I think that's a great step. But I think there's also some programs we can implement that are backed by research that can be done with regular classroom educators. So it doesn't require additional training. It doesn't require extra materials that are going to cost taxpayer money, but things that can be done within the classroom to promote self-esteem, to promote awareness of how your actions affect other people, to hopefully reduce some of that kind of bullying, some of that stigma that we have around those issues in town. I think another thing I'd really like to push is more vocational opportunities and community partnerships. I think one of the strengths of this town is that we have people who want to help. There are people who want to get involved, and we should use that. So I'm really looking for ways to maximize the resources that we have, and not just financial resources. I mean the town people, I mean the kids, I mean the teachers, because we have fantastic people here that we really need to give them opportunities to get involved. Wonderful. And you know, to touch on the point of additional programs that can be implemented that do not require additional staff. Here, under your priorities, this is a little bit about you. You said maximizing and expanding character resources while keeping taxpayer budget in mind. As you're aware, the taxes are going to go up in this town. We are building a new elementary school to replace DECUS and Minot Forest. So this is very important to this town. At the same time, the school is underfunded. Right, just from our current, the budget that just came out for the fiscal year 2020, I think down to $71,000 is lacking. $71,000 is, you know, is lacking. So how would you help to reach a consensus? Right. That's a really good question. I've thought a lot about this particular issue because obviously the budget is always an issue. It's always a challenge, and there are difficult decisions that have to be made. We don't live in a perfect world with perfect resources. I wish we did. So it's really trying to balance, I think, the greater good, what's going to be the best for the most group of people. I think no matter what decision you make, someone's going to be negatively affected. And that's awful, but it's unfortunately reality because we can't keep asking the taxpayers for more and more money. We have to figure out ways to use what we have, to be creative. To that end, some of the things I'm interested in is, can we have high school students, maybe from the National Honor Society or other service groups, come in and volunteer to work with younger students so we can hire less para staff, for example, something like that. How do we get parents involved? How do we get more community members involved so we can reduce staffing costs in that way? So really looking at creative ways, some of which might work, some of which might not, but really trying to kind of be a little bit more creative to make the most of what we have. So another thing in terms of maximizing our resources that I'm really interested in doing is making sure that we have planned maintenance being done on a regular basis. This is a question I need to find out about. It could be being done. I know the community has a lot of questions, particularly with the new roof incident, or the recent roof incident, about have things been checked on, have they been followed to plan. And I think that is really important to look into because, especially as you said, we're building this new school, we're moving forward with that. We need to get in the habit of making sure we're doing all the planned maintenance for the buildings that we have so that we're in a good spot to make sure we do that for the investment that we're putting into this. So we're not coming back and saying we need this repair that potentially could have been prevented. So that's something I'm really interested in. And I also wanted to share, related to the budget, there's some exciting news that I want the community to know about. That there's a bill in the Senate right now that will readjust, is proposing to readjust the funding formula from the state, and it would change how the state determines how much money we get from the state and how much we as a community are obligated to pay. And I think it would really, they're focusing on especially the special education costs and health insurance costs to make those more current. When the formula was developed, it was almost 20 years ago, and things have changed a lot since then, particularly in special education programming and health insurance premiums. So I encourage everyone to reach out to your legislators if you're interested to support this bill because it could really help bring a lot more money into the district.
And you are a teacher, as I mentioned.
A speech pathologist.
You work with students, and you're talking about how we can involve other members of the community or even students, okay, in order to mitigate the cost and hiring more employees, more teachers. Is that realistic?
I don't know. That's one of the questions that I have, something I'd want to explore. I think it could be. I know, for example, a few years ago, the issue of moving the preschool to the high school came up as a potential change in the district reorganizing. And a lot of people were really concerned about that and thinking, oh, this is, not good for the kids, it's not good for the staff. But I've seen in my experience, we have this at Old Rochester, we have a preschool in the high school, and it's been great for the kids. The students can come in, the high school students come in as volunteers, they come in as part of their child development class and early childhood education class, so they're getting hands-on experience with what they're learning in class, and they're also providing support so not as many staff need to be hired. So I think it potentially could be realistic. I think it would require finagling, but I think it's worth looking into.
Okay. We lose our students. Okay, we lose our funding. Part of us losing our funding is due because we're losing students because of school choice.
Yes.
Okay, they're going to Old Rochester, they're going to Upper Cape, they're going everywhere else, but coming to Wareham, and the funding goes with them. What is your plan to fixing that?
So I think that's two parts. I think the kids who are leaving to go to Old Rochester or other schools that are similar, that don't offer a vocational program, it's because of that perception. It's this idea that if you go to Wareham, you're going to get bullied. If you go to Wareham, you won't get a good education, which is not true. And I think that's the message we need to get out. We need to be more proactive about showing the public, here are the awesome things that are happening. No, these things aren't true. Yes, some kids have bad experiences, but that's true anywhere. Kids get bullied everywhere. And not to excuse that behavior, but not to say it's only a Wareham problem. If you go somewhere else, it's not necessarily going to go away. So I think that perception part is for the first part, and then increasing those vocational opportunities for kids who want to go to Upper Cape. So I know Wareham does have what they call a school to work program where kids can earn course credit for doing some kind of internship. But my understanding is there aren't a lot of kids who are able to take advantage of that because of scheduling issues. And other requirement conflicts. So I'd really like to look at reimagining that so more kids are able to take advantage of that opportunity, because I think that might help us keep more kids in-house. If we can give them something similar, then they won't necessarily have to leave to go get that.
Okay. Now, I've been asking this, anybody that I've been able to ask, I asked this the superintendent, I asked this Ms. Cote during my interview with her. The question is, what is your stance regarding merit versus social promotion?
I was waiting for this question.
You were waiting.
Yes, and you won't like my answer because I don't have one.
Okay.
My answer, I shouldn't say I don't have one, I do have one. My answer is I don't think this can be a policy decision. For me, it just does not feel right to say it should be merit-based, it should be social. It's such an individual decision, and it's based on so many different factors. I agreed with what Ms. Cote said in her interview that I think the priority should be on merit, but you do have to look at what merit looks like for each individual student. It's not realistic to think that every student is going to be at grade level 100% of the time, every year. It's just not realistic. We have kids with various kinds of learning disabilities or neurological disabilities that their merit is a different benchmark. And we want to push them to get to the highest point that they can, but if they're not necessarily going to achieve grade level mastery, it doesn't make sense to keep them back. So I think we really need to look at, are there learning disabilities that are holding kids back? And if so, are they getting supports that are appropriate to help them get to the next level if that's a realistic goal? And if it's not a realistic goal, looking at what the goals are. I think we need to look at, is there a family situation going on where the student is unable to get to school on a regular basis? Or are they coming to school hungry or tired or having just seen somebody have a fight in their house? Those are different kinds of issues that aren't going to be fixed by giving them more math homework. So the answer to the social promotion versus merit, I think, yes, it definitely does do students a disservice to move them forward before they're ready, but we need to look at what the reasons are that they haven't met those benchmarks and figure out an appropriate intervention.
Now you're talking about the individualized education.
Mm-hmm.
That is expensive.
Well, it is, but I don't think we necessarily have to provide an individualized education if we're just looking at what the root causes are. I'm sure there will be there's overlapping reasons for why kids might not be meeting these grade level goals. So if we find out, okay, there's this cohort of kids that are having this challenge, this cohort of kids that are having this challenge, then we can address those in different ways.
Okay. Now your resume checks out, you have the qualifications, you have done your research. Mm-hmm. What do you think is your weakness going towards this?
My weakness is that this is new to me. You know, I haven't been on a board before. I know the education system. I've worked in schools. I've worked with teachers, with parents. I haven't worked with administrators in terms of creating policy. I've been involved with following policy, but I think that's, and I don't know that it's a weakness necessarily, but it's an area that I will need some growth.
Okay. So you're going to, once again, people will be voting, the elections are April 2nd. Mm-hmm. What's the last note you want people to take?
That I think we are going in the right direction, and I want to be part of keeping that going.
Okay.
You know.
Well, thank you very much for being here with to talk about
Mm-hmm.
your hopes and dreams, mm-hmm. and I wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you.
You talked about that you need to work on your campaigning skills.
Yes.
Well,
I'm uncomfortable in front of a camera.
Well, you know your stuff.
Yes.
So, I hope more people are going to give you the chance.
Thank you. And I think that's what I have. I have experience and I have education. And like I said, I have a willingness to listen. So
wonderful.
Thank you.
So you have heard from Jennifer Bailey, who is one of the 4 candidates running for the 2 open seats for the school committee. Elections are April 2nd. So this is one interview. Hopefully I'll get to meet all the 4 candidates and you'll get to decide for yourself. If you have any questions for her, I am sure she would love to hear them from you. So thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you.
You did wonderful.
Welcome back. As I told you, we have a lot of materials in today's show, and therefore we are not going to be doing with the history segment. We actually skipped the history segment today, but do not worry, this is not going to be the norm of things. So thank you for being back. We are going to air the interview I did with the Wareham Police Department. I sat down with the acting chief, John Walsek, Lieutenant Walter Correa, and Lieutenant John Gerard, to discuss the predicament that they're facing at the police station. Please take a look. Wareham community has outgrown its police department. For years, due to budget restrictions, the police department has been forced to make do despite the community's needs. Joining me for this discussion about budget restrictions and the repercussions of this is the Wareham Acting Chief, John Welsack.
Good morning.
We have Lieutenant John Gerard and also Lieutenant Walter Correa.
Good morning.
Morning, gentlemen. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for inviting us.
So we are talking about the Wareham Police Station, the budget restrictions that it's facing. It has been undergoing for years, the repercussions of that, and what you see as solution, if there is solution to this. So first, I would like us to paint us a picture of the police station, one built in 1971, I believe, right?
Yes.
What kind of police station are we looking at? And what are the restrictions that you're facing there?
The restrictions that we have in the police department are many. There's, and just the first is to think about is the prisoners that we house. Every single time a person is arrested, before they're bailed, they have to be held, and we actually will hold people sometimes 2 and 3 days if there's a long weekend and they have to go to court. And those facilities are constantly getting failing grades from the Department of Public Health, that we have to do constant adjustments to them. You know, we book prisoners literally feet from our 911 answering center for the town of Wareham, which is really the nerve center of the town. We have civilian communications folks that are literally steps away from belligerent and combative, frequently intoxicated people. We cannot house a juvenile or a female at the same time because they need to be sight and sound separated. We don't have a private place that we can interview a family who's been involved in a domestic issue or a situation, and that is very sad. We don't have a private area that we can interview them. And so there's all sorts of deficiencies with the building. Maybe you can speak to any of those.
Well, some of the other things that have been brought up is some people have talked about putting an addition on the station. Right now, our station, we've been told by multiple electricians that you cannot basically plug in another thing. We actually had to run power from the old ambulance barn, which is behind the police station, to be able to provide power to our air conditioning system for our IT room. One of the things that came up when 911 put in new equipment to our station, there was additional equipment creating additional heat in the room that it's in. So we had to cool that room with a new air conditioning unit, and we had to actually literally run power from another building to be able to power it.
Wow. And I did visit the station with you. You gave me a tour. What struck out to me was the 2 cells that are facing the window, out in the public. People can see what's going on inside the police station. And that to me presented a safety challenge.
Not only a safety challenge, but a privacy challenge. We have prisoners or detainees that can literally look outside, and people walking up our ramp can look inside at our prisoners. It's uncalled. I don't know why it was made like that in the first place, and it astounds me.
Wow. So where are most of our resources spent?
For the police department, resources, personnel.
Personnel. Okay. And how many personnel do we have? How many officers do we have?
Right now, top to bottom, we have 45 full-time officers. That includes 2 officers that recently graduated from the police academy.
And how many officers do we need for our population, which is 23,000 residents, and even more during summer?
I believe we should have 57 would be an ideal number right now. And that would give us the resources that we need to actually deploy people on the street properly.
And where are we getting the 57?
We're not.
No, but where's that number coming from? Why 57?
I look at FBI studies. I look at our call volume, our arrest volume, the number of minutes and pending calls go, and things like that.
And that compared with, many of the towns around us as well, kind of gives you an idea based on population, what we should have for officers as well.
By example, Dartmouth has over 70 full-time officers, and Wareham has 45, and we're a very busy agency.
You are. You are. I see the number of calls that you have received in 2017. You are very, very busy. So during Thursday's budget hearing, and this was February 28th this year, you testified about the restrictions that you're facing, what you're telling us right now. And you shared this statement. You said, "We are making up for lost time, years of neglect." Could you expand on that?
What I mean by that is that as Wareham has grown, the police department has not grown with it. So we've had, Wareham Crossing put in, and the department did not grow. We had Union Pond Apartments, 815 Main Street put in, and the department has not grown. Aside from all the streets that have been built and other commercial areas, the department just has not kept pace. We have failed to keep pace with the growth of the community.
And by saying we have failed to keep pace, is that the community has failed to give you the resources that you need?
I can't speak to exactly why things have happened in the past, although employed by the department at the time, I was not in a position to make those decisions. And I wouldn't dare to speak for those past administrations and their efforts in trying to get more people. I know for a fact that I've located in the department documents where past administrations have spoken about the challenges. And I even addressed them in the report that I gave to the Finance Committee.
Okay, and you got promoted last year as acting chief.
Acting chief was made May 1, yes, correct.
Okay, so when you took over, what condition was the department in? What was your number one challenge, something that you had to take care of?
In my opinion, the number one challenge is increasing our manpower.
Okay.
And we're doing the best we can with that.
And not only for, the safety of the officers, for the safety of the public. In public safety, this is a very busy community. There's much more activity now, especially in the Wareham North area, like the chief said, with all the new businesses, housing, etc. The public safety need is grown. And there have been times in the past where we've had more officers than we have now on the street without all that we have now.
Correct.
So what has happened? Sorry, did you
One
want
of the
to
biggest things to expand on what Walter just said was the calls for service that we have now are more labor intensive, for lack of a better term. We're dealing with parties that the call requires us to be there for a lot more time to sort things out, or maybe get the people other services, whether it be DCF, transporting them to the hospital for mental health evaluations, or if it's a situation where it's a domestic situation and we need to potentially get them a restraining order or get them to a safe place. There's a lot more time-intensive stuff nowadays. Our job as a police officer has changed dramatically, I would say, in the past 10 years. You guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
Whereas we were more, for lack of a better term, cops and robbers 10, 15 years ago, where now we're more of social workers.
Yep. There's a lot of social service type calls.
Correct.
Yes, you just last year alone, 2017, 57,636 overall calls for services. We're talking about 234 related calls for overdose, 171 for mental health, and 1,310 for related domestic calls. So per shift, how many officers are there? And when these kind of calls, these things happen, and they seem to be happening frequently in our community, how long does that officer have to take care of this situation?
We have to take as long as need be to correct a problem. So we have mandates from the Commonwealth that we have to follow with domestics and various situations, especially with families. But of those, 57,000 calls that we cited, there are many of those calls that we take care of in less than a few minutes. That might be we're checking somebody's building for them in the middle of the night. We're checking an area in the middle of the night. So it's not like every single call requires hours of service. But we could have calls that go weeks before they're closed. Just because the nature of the investigation, that on and off there's multiple things that have to happen with that call before they're actually closed out.
Yes.
I would say one of the things is to take a domestic violence call. I believe the number we came up with, the average number we came up with, was approximately 35 minutes. That's from the dispatcher dispatching the unit to the call, the person responding, and answering the call. Because there is that case where you might have to get them to a safe, whoever the battered person was, to a safe location, or you might have to deal with children, get DCF involved, and they have to come out and respond and potentially find care for the child.
Okay.
And it should be noted that, you know, in domestic disturbances, if someone is assaulted and physically assaulted, the Commonwealth says arrest is not mandated. However, it's the preferred response. We absolutely have to charge somebody, but 9 out of 10 of those cases, an actual physical arrest is being made. So the on-scene time may be 35, 40 minutes. The actual time to gather all the paperwork, do the booking, could go into a couple hours.
Okay. So back to that, how many officers do we have per shift?
We have a minimum of 4 officers on the street with a supervisor, so 5 total police officers available out on the street at any given time, and 1 officer inside the station.
Okay, so when an incident that takes longer occurs, what do we do?
We other calls get put in pending. If the cars are tied up, you know, all we need is 1 accident on the Cranberry Highway, and that's going to tie up 2 to 3 cars potentially with you know, vehicles, traffic, and injuries and things like that. So the other calls are just placed in a pending mode. They're triaged by the communication staff and the police sergeant that's on duty.
Okay.
And other times, we'll have to call a neighboring town agency to respond to you know, a particular call. If the car is tied up, and then we got something that is kind of hot that comes in, then one of the neighboring towns would come over and help us out.
Yep.
So the
Mutual aid.
community is not left alone?
No, there's always police officers here.
Okay.
We would never have a point where there wouldn't be police officers here. And we have a very good working relationship with the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department, and they have canine officers frequently in the community, and that's very helpful. But the state police will back us up on calls. You know, Marion, Rochester, Bourne will come in as needed.
Okay. So you're asking for more money, more funding. From your current budget, how much additional funding do you need?
Well, I think we're looking for over $700,000 increase in our budget to add 12 people. But, you know, we have to make sure people realize we understand that a lot of people in this town are on fixed incomes. And we have to appreciate where they're coming from with their tax dollars. But we would be neglectful as administrators not to let the people know what our needs are. And those are legitimate needs. There's nothing frivolous that we're asking for.
Okay, so you said you're mindful that we have most of people in this community are on fixed income. Also, taxes are going up due to the new elementary school that's coming up. And you're not the only department in this town seeking for more funding. So you are aware of all those factors, and you're doing your due diligence to inform the community. However, to me, you know, if you're coming out saying you need more funding and that funding goes towards protecting the community, I think you're priority. You need to be on top of the list. We need to act on this right away, never mind just to listen to it. So why do you think this community is not acting as fast as it should?
I think that our town fathers, the town administrator, are doing the best that they can with the money they have.
Okay. Have you reviewed the budget?
No.
Okay. All right. So the town, you said you work very well with Derek Sullivan, our town administrator, and they're supportive of you. And
I feel he's very supportive, as well as the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee.
So are you satisfied with the response that we do not have enough money to give it to you? I'm not a forensic person to look at the numbers, but I have to trust them, that they're certainly not out there to harm us at all. No, okay. I don't believe that at all. So you're speaking of trust, and you guys know your job much more than anybody else in this community. You're here to serve us. Are we facing a crisis? How fast should we act on this? How much time do we have?
I think that we should have hired the officers yesterday. But I will say this, in an emergency, we'll be there for you. You know, we will be there because that's what we do. We make do because that's what we have to do. And we have, we do the best that we can. That's what I would say. And, you know, I consider it a problem, a big problem, but I feel as the acting police chief that we really need to get that out and let the public know what's going on.
Okay.
We have essentially been doing more with less for a
Yes.
long time now. Like, I believe Walt's brought up, we did have a time where we had more officers, but then people had retired or maybe transferred to another place, and at some points that wasn't backfilled. And it's a long process to hire someone, especially if you hire someone without any experience. You're looking at a year for that person actually being able to start answering calls on their own. So.
You mentioned you've been doing less for a very long time, and when people were asking the school administration why a new elementary school, and while they have been doing less for a very long time, like why now? So the same question to you, why now? So if you were able to manage this and you've been managing this for all this time, why act on this now?
Because I'm the person sitting in the seat right now, in the seat of the head of the department, and it's important for me to let the public know. So the officers work at I would say a furious pace, you know, and they're used to that work level, but it's certainly not the optimum that we could give the community.
Okay. Would you have anything else you'd like to add?
I was just going to echo the same thing. It's been basically public safety in terms of the police. It's been back burner for a long time, and at some point you have to bridge that gap.
And
Right.
Another thing is, one of the things that was brought up, because we had a discussion a year ago, probably when he took the position, about what the things that we needed, and we actually, in some aspects, we took a step back because we realized that the school needed, the elementary school was kind of a big topic and a big thing in town.
And very important.
We were quiet about what we needed in that aspect, but we can't. It's something that did we make a mistake in not bringing it up earlier? Maybe, but I think our more important thing is we want everyone to know that we need to get more people. We definitely need more people.
And the requests aren't, you know, if we had more people, we'd be able to handle things more proactively.
Have
you know,
there been
quality of life.
incidences that you could point out to that this happened because of the budget restrictions that we're going through?
I think that we could look at any given night, and if we were to look at it through a microscope, I think we could find multiple incidents every day where somebody is saying, you know, why wasn't a police officer here quicker? You know, why wasn't this crime prevented? Because we weren't in the area because we were tied up on calls. I'll give you an example. Is just the other night we had a break at a business at 3 o'clock in the morning. The 2 cars that were working that area were tied up at an overdose call. So while that overdose call was going on and those officers are working to save a life, a business was getting broken into and items stolen on the Cranberry Highway at 3 o'clock in the morning. So if we had had more officers, we would have had an officer presumably on patrol. I'm not saying that would have been prevented, but that's an example right there within the last couple of weeks that I can think of.
And the culture of our community has changed. We have recreational marijuana store in town. Any challenges that has presented?
We haven't seen any
No, we
uptick.
haven't seen anything.
Okay.
The only challenge that it probably would have existed is the parking challenge if they didn't establish a remote parking spot.
Okay.
Parking
Yeah.
lot, I should say.
And that was a little bit of, that was some man hours there, actually planning out and making sure that we didn't have a disaster on Main Street with cars and traffic, especially where it's right next to the entrance to Toby Hospital's emergency room.
With the recreational marijuana store, with the new development projects that are going on in the community, all that money that we accumulate from taxes, from these new businesses and new development, are all going towards a general fund. No portion of that is allocated solely to the police department, right?
No.
Okay. And you guys are the ones that are
serving the community. You are there to make sure that everybody is safe and their businesses are protected, and yet there isn't a cut to make sure that as how community is growing, the department is growing as well with the community to mitigate the need.
And that's true, and we're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're the one town agency that is here, boots on the ground, ready to serve at any moment. And, I believe we're a priority, but I also have to trust that the Derek Sullivan and the town fathers are aware of our problems and are doing the best they can for us.
Is it discouraging for you guys to be able to do all this work and, well, not reaping the benefits, but not to be recognized as you should?
Well, I don't think we're so concerned about the recognition, but I think it frustrates me when I see personally it frustrates me when I see other police departments who have so much more than we do, and they are able to do a lot more for their communities, and it frustrates me. It makes me feel bad for the town of Wareham, that we don't have the funding to do what other departments do.
And also the funding to have competitive pay to keep officers here, right?
Yeah, I mean, our officers are paid better than some, but are paid considerably less than others. We're very lucky that we have a very dedicated group of police officers in Wareham, and they're very dedicated to keeping Wareham safe. I have to say that.
Okay, so there is this station that needs overhaul. You need the new officers, and there are also issues at the police station that needs to be mitigated. What's the priority right now? Is it just to get more bodies, more boots on the ground, or the police
I think
station?
for the Wareham Police Department, absolutely is more people.
Correct.
That's a priority.
And for the citizens of this community as well. That's priority. Get the boots on the ground.
True. And it is so important because, many years ago when I was a little kid, I toured a fire station in Palm Beach, Florida, and the fire chief said to me, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" I said, "I want to be a fire chief like you," because I was a call fireman at the time, and then I ended up going into police work. But I remember him saying to me many years ago, he said, "Trucks and buildings are important, but it's people that make a difference in a department." And I've always remembered what he said, and that's 100% true. It's the people that make a difference. And the dedication of the officers that we have to keep up the work that they do, the pace that they do a great job. Great job.
So if somebody would ask you, how long can we afford to continue like this? How long can the police department afford to, do its due diligence, to make due? Do we have a time frame?
I wouldn't say we have a time frame, but I would say that if it keeps going at the pace it does, you may see a reduction in the services that we provide.
Okay.
Because we won't be able to respond and address every issue that just comes down, as we don't now, but I think that might even be heightened.
The vast majority of the public doesn't deal with us in critical situations or very, dangerous situations. The vast majority of the calls that we get at times are for complaints about loitering, noise complaints, other things. And when we have these other issues going on, we can't respond to a lot of that. So I think that's one of the things that we miss out on, not being able to. Some of these other communities that don't have the call volume are able to have some of these programs, like the chief was mentioning, that we just can't do here in town.
And that's too bad. There are things that we would love to do to have more reach out with the community.
Yes.
And I have to say, overall, Wareham residents support us tremendously. We get a lot of positive feedback from the community, and we have a great town, and that's why we want to do the best that we can for them. We have constantly, a little girl come in the station the other day and bring us cookies. She made us cookies, and we constantly receive notes and cards from people thanking us for their individual officers' actions and things like that. And we really do appreciate that. But we want to be here the best we can for them.
Okay. So any possible solutions, or what can be taken care of now? I
will say this, that we look for every grant out there possible and to assist on our funding. And Other than that, we're
More of that interview will be aired today through the social media pages on Facebook. We only missed a few seconds of that interview. Thank you for joining me this morning. If you missed me this morning, we'll air this episode at 6 tonight. And see you Monday. Gleason YMCA will be here, and hopefully we'll get to talk to the new director at the Gleason YMCA. Have a wonderful day, Wareham. Have a great weekend.